Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're going to talk about the anthology Space Odyssey that it said was put together by Robert Silverberg. The book itself doesn't say, but there's a whole lot of stories on here. Before we get into those, as always, please like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you know when new videos come out. Leave a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys, and I always respond back. And spread the word. It helps me out. It's easy for you to do. So, yeah. With that, Space Odyssey. There's a whole lot of stories in here, and some are forgettable. Some just seem like they belong in the Twilight Zone, but there are 6 that stand out to me. And I'm going to talk about those 6. I'm going to try to do it in a fairly decent amount of time. I don't want to rush it, but I don't want it to be long either. The first one is The Tunnel Under the World by Frederick Pohl. This one's interesting because it reminds me of a sci-fi Groundhog Day. Basically, it is this small town that they wake up every morning from a nightmare of an explosion, and they live the same day over and over. June 15th, so it's not Groundhog Day, but they live the same day over and over, and every day it's they're like being exposed to new ads. So it kind of has like a little communication background to it too, which I found kind of interesting. But a couple of Pete guys are on to the what's going on, and they're not gonna stand for it. And by doing that, I mean they find out what's going on within the town. Burkhart basically finds out that they're all robots, and what this is that the only reason why they live the same day over and over and over is so they can get data for the research that they're doing in the advertising. The explosion that he keeps waking up from, it happened on June 14th, and it wiped out the whole city. Everyone was dead. The whole city was basically gutted, and this company moved in. They basically rebuild the city as it was. But I mean, the houses aren't as solid as they were. I mean, they obviously they cut some corners, but yeah, they find out that they've all died, and now they're just living the same day as test subjects, being subjected to different advertisements. And in the end, I mean, there's nothing that they can do. Burkhart realizes I can't get away. He ends up in this tunnel, and it leads him to this like big abyss. And then he sees another smaller tunnel, but he realizes there's really nowhere I can go here. And basically gives in and decides to go along with the whole scheme of everything. So that was that one. The second one is The Coffin Cure by Alan E. Norse. And this one is interesting because it's 3 doctors who are basically looking to cure the common cold. And they come up with the remedy. They each take it, and then they give it to 600 college students who are always sniffling and sneezing and all of that. Um, and none of them, all their colds go away. There's no sniffling, there's no sneezing, there's no coughing, and there's no recurrence of it. They get wind of another doctor who's getting ready to go public with his findings, and Dr. Coffin, Coffin, not the other coffin, but the coffin curing, pounding a nail in the coffin. He basically says we got to go forward, and he leaves his two associates kind of aside. He calls the press conference and says, here, we've cured the common cold. We've done it. Me and others, ETAL, and others have done it. We've basically done the impossible. Well, what they don't expect, or what they don't plan on, is the side effects. And the side effects take about 2 months. But when it hits, the olfactory senses being kind of shut down by the cold, the common cold, makes smells and that tolerable. It's not overtly strong. When you take the cold cells out that are attached to the olfactory nerves, according to Norse, in the story, you have those senses are overwhelmed. They stand no chance. Everything that they smell is magnified. The smell doesn't change. Everything is just magnified. And it's magnified so much that it makes everything smell bad. Too much. And they can't eat, they can't drink, they can't be outside. I mean, just being around other people, they can smell the last time they took a shower. And then, they were like, oh, well, what are we going to do? We gave this to 600 students too. And those students come and they basically want blood. And so they try to figure that their plan is, okay, let's see if we can give ourselves the cold back. And they're trying all these different ways. They try the antibody. That doesn't work. And the antibody of the antibody doesn't work. And one of the doctor's wives, who she's funny in the story because she has a cold and she can't speak properly because she's got the code, kind of thing. But she says, okay, you're giving it antigens. How about Uncle Gins? Kind of as a joke. But it dawns on him after that we're missing something and we can do this. And they actually do, and they give themselves a cold back. And then they distribute that because, by this point now, the vaccine's been given to everybody. So now it's now you got to go and basically infect everybody with the common cold again to solve the problem. You solve the problem so well that it becomes too much and almost impossible to give people the cold again. But I thought that was an interesting one too. And then another one, the next one, The Lost Machine by John Wyndham. This is interesting because it begins with a father and a daughter who are talking to two doctors or scientists. And the father has basically told them the story about a machine. And they don't buy a word of it. And when they go to show the doctors the machine, it's basically a puddle of metal, just gone, basically. And they don't know what happened to the machine. So the daughter goes in and she puts paper in it. And the machine actually had written out notes. Now, she had to go over these notes, these pages, and notate and try to translate what the robot or what the machine was saying. And it's basically the machine counting its time here on Earth. And because it comes from Mars. And the first machine it comes into contact with is a car. Very primal to it. You know, what things on wheels? What is this? And it just recounts its tales of humans and the humans not understanding the machine and not understanding what it's trying to do. And every machine that it comes up, that it finds itself facing, is not, it can't think for itself. It can't do anything on its own. It needs the human guidance. So the machine basically realizes that here on Earth, at least, and there's no way to get back home. There's no way to get back to Mars. Is that the machine? It's lonely. It's a lonely machine. Um, and what the machine does is it takes acid that's in the doctor's, or that's in the scientist's office or lab, and it basically pours it on itself, and that's how it melts down. Um, and basically, the machine commits suicide, which is not something that you see a whole lot of. Usually the machines are like the things that end up dominating and ruling the world, but not in this case. In this case, the machine realizes that, yeah, it is. It could probably dominate. It's stronger than anything else, more intelligent, but it's alone, and it would be miserable on Earth, and just doesn't want to be alone. So there's that. And then there's one called "And He Built a Crooked House" by Robert A. Heineken. And I've read this somewhere and before, and I don't really remember where. But it's basically a more architectural kind of story of basically building sort of this like prism house, cube within cube within cube, and spacing it up. And he builds it for a friend of his who, after a few drinks, his friend's like, okay, and cuts him a check. His wife knows nothing of it. And he starts building the house, and it's like 3 floors, 8 rooms. When they get to the house, though, and they're going to show his wife, all the rooms seem to be missing. There's only like a master bedroom from the outside. It's not until they go in that they see the big living room, and that you've got stairs that come down from the ceiling, and you go up there, and there's all these bedrooms, and there's a kitchen that anyone would die for, more than state of the art. But the house is a major conundrum. Opening up one window and you're looking straight down. You have to like hold on. You open up another window and you're looking like at the Chrysler Building in Detroit. You're looking at the Empire State Building in New York. And you see this skyline that doesn't really exist, but it's kind of like what you're looking at. And they're trying to find, as they're ready to leave, they go out the door, only to find themselves right back in the house again. So most of the story is really spent with them trying to get out of the house. So that's why they're trying the different windows. And one window shows really, really weird trees and a really weird sun. And it's almost like they're looking from another planet at a different sun, like a different solar system. And they finally find a window that leads out to a rose bushes. Now you got to jump down. You're a couple floors up, and you're going to be landing in thorns, so it's not going to be a comfortable landing. But that's how they get out of the house. And then they find that they're like way away. The house is gone, and they're they don't even know where they're at. They have to backtrack to a road. And they basically hitch a ride And when they get there, the house is gone. Only the car that they drove there is there. The house is gone. So it's like, where did it go? And it's like it's a conundrum. And it's all because it was built in what the architect calls fourth dimension, which isn't which he's looking at the fourth dimension in terms of spatial dimension. So he's going against convention here, and building it in that four dimensions really messes up things with the house. And I thought it was an interesting story. Maybe not one of the best ones, but up there. And then the last of the six that I want to talk about is the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven and Other Lost Songs. And this one, I did not write it down, so I need to look up the author. Give me one quick moment. It's a long story. Carter Schultz. And this is interesting. I picked this one. One reason I thought it was interesting is I like Beethoven. I love the music of Beethoven. And so does the main character. And he starts off as a composer, but he takes criticism that his work doesn't revisit the heritage. It doesn't recall the past. That it's empty, even though the composers, it's all there. I'm putting in my history, my heritage, and it's not necessarily good. So after that criticism, he then becomes a musicologist, where he's going to be talking about music and musical theory. Sanderson is the one that criticizes him, and Largins is the one that basically becomes the musicologist. Sanderson basically convinces Largins to try out this machine where you can actually go and be in the mind of the composer. And when you listen to the music, you then can hear and you can think the way that the composer thinks. And he starts with the first piano concerto of Beethoven. And he's listening to that. He has to take this drug, and he's basically kind of strapped down. And when he wakes up, he's got this whole new sort of sense of how the music is. And what he finds is that they're going and these people are transferring themselves into the minds of composers. And by doing that, they don't really realize that they are altering, because of their failed careers, they're altering the music itself of the composers. And the case in point, at the end of this one, I'm keeping it brief, is when Sanderson dies and basically kills himself with the machine. But when he does that, he leaves Largins in control of this group. And Largins goes back to when Beethoven would have been writing the Ninth Symphony. And he realizes that there's a whole lot of other people in Beethoven's head. And it's what they call this crosstalk. When composer can hear the voices of those in his head that shouldn't be there. And Sanderson is one of those. And as Beethoven is trying to compose the Ode to Joy, using Schiller's Ode to Joy, every voice in his head is starting to throw out lines in German, lines that they would want to use, lines that would have been good for them if they were composing. And it breaks Beethoven to the point where he goes mad and he can't take anymore. And the interesting thing is that what happens is the Ninth Symphony gets lost. It doesn't get written because of all these failed artists who have gone and basically driven him mad. They've basically robbed society of a symphony. So he realizes that there's nothing I can do but turn these people in. Because if this keeps happening, we're just going to rob. How many symphonies are we going to end up with? 4 or 5? How many more are going to get lost before these people just ruin everything? So it's going to bring an investigation and all of that down. So that's basically that story. So those 6 I thought were really good stories out of the anthology. The anthology on its own, I probably would give about a 4.3. Like I said, there were a lot of stories that were good. Some were, I think, forgettable, and a lot of them, quite a few of them, seemed like they could fit in the Twilight Zone. If Rod Serling was ever looking for material, this would be a good book to pick some stuff out of. But maybe as a beginner to sci-fi, this could be the one for you. But yeah, I'd say 4.3 out of 5. So with that, please like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you know when new videos come on out. Leave a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys, and like I said, I always respond back. And spread the word. It helps me out, and it's easy for you. And as always, until next time, keep YouTube literate, and God bless.